Well, welcome back to the 7 Steps of the Scientific Method and your science fair, 5th grade science fair project. We talked last time about observation research in class. We talked about the definition of fermentation, the simple breakdown of sugars, and we also talked about how or what John's hypothesis should look like. We also talked about how he could do his experiment and how he could set that up. So today in this video what we're going to be talking about or seeing is how he actually did set that up, and we're going to be talking about a couple new definitions. So make sure you have your definition book out before we get started. One of the things, if you're looking at this slide, that you're going to notice is different from the ending slide last time is it talks in here about how John is keeping all of his information in his topic, on this topic, in his journal. For 5th grade this year, we are not going to require you to have a journal, but what we will require you is to have those two pieces we've talked about earlier, which are your materials list and your procedural list. Those are what we kind of consider your journal for this 5th grade, but as you move on into 7th, 8th, 9th grade, if you do a project like this, your topic journal will be required. It's more like a research type paper, and they will require more of something like that. So we're going to move on now to our formulate a hypothesis, and we're going to see what John came up with, and we're going to see how close our guesses in class were to his. So after talking with his teacher, doing his research, he comes up with his hypothesis. Again, we're going to see those two key words. Let me underline those real quick. If and then, those are the two key words that you will need in your hypothesis. So John says if more sugar is added, then the bread will rise higher. And again, there's your effect, which is more sugar is your effect, your thing, and what happens to that thing, it will rise hopefully higher. That's what he's guessing will happen, that the more sugar I put in, the effect will be that the bread rises higher. So there's your two definitions from before, effect and effect. I just need to clear out those ink things so we can move on. So again, looking at his hypothesis, again, it's an educated guess. There's just a little definition again, but we've added two words in here that we're going to talk about. One of them is your independent variables, and the other is your dependent variables. Okay, so those are two words, and as you see that red note underneath, these variables will be defined in the next few slides. We'll talk about those a little bit more. But what I want you to listen or think about before we move on to those slides is the word independent. Where have you heard that before? You've probably heard a teacher say you need to work on this independently. What does that mean? Okay, you've maybe heard of yourself as called a dependent of your parents. What do you think that means? So you might want to push pause right now. Maybe put down kind of a educated guess. I gave you some background, an educated guess as to what those two words might mean. So while I'm getting rid of this ink so we can move on to the next slide, you might want to pause and then restart it again once you get your little definitions down. So I'm going to move on to the next slide now. And again, what is the difference between these two? So hopefully you came up with what you think independent and dependent mean, because we're going to go over those right now. So independent variable is the one we're going to start with first. Again, don't write this down. I'll give you a definition at the end of more so maybe an easier definition that will help you remember it. But the actual, what it is it's a manipulated variable. It's the thing that's being changed, is a factor that's intentionally varied by the experimenter. So in your experiment, your independent variable is the one thing that's changing all the time, that you're kind of testing. In John's case, as you look down, it's the sugar. So if we look here, his independent variable is the amount of sugar in his experiment. Okay, so that's the independent variable. It's the one thing that works independently to make that part of the experiment its own. So that's what independent variable is. I'm going to get rid of this ink quick, and we're going to move on to dependent. If you need to pause at any time to write those down or rewind to put those definitions back in, feel free to do that. We're going to move on to dependent now. And the dependent or responding variable, again, don't worry about the definition, I'll give you maybe an easier one at the end, is the factor that may change as a result of changes made in the independent variable. For example, the more sugar we put in, the more it might change. But your answer or your results depend on how much sugar I put in. In this case, it would be the size of the loaf of bread. So that's the example of what it would be. So a definition for dependent variable is it's your results. It's what happened to the thing that you're working with. In John's case, it's the bread. What happened to that bread when we put more sugar in or less sugar in? Did it get bigger? Did it get smaller? It's what happens. It's your results. So that's what your dependent variable is. So as we move forward, we're going to kind of pause right there with these. We'll have more of a discussion in class, but come in with those definitions so we can talk maybe more about them. We'll give you some more examples of what those would look like in actual experiments. Okay, so we will see you next time.